Welcome to I Drink Your Podcast, where we drink and talk about movies from 2007.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker!
I don't remember seeing this movie.
What's your power? You don't got the power.
Keeps away the narwhals.
The only way to defeat a waffle is by making it a pancake.
This is one doodle that can't be undid, Holmes Gillett.
Now back to that ass.
Were you masturbating?
I drink your podcast. I drink it up.
Welcome to the podcast, everybody. I'm Matt, joined by Ben, Wesley, and Emily. How are you guys doing?
Great.
Doing well.
The podcast.
Yeah. And this is I Drink Your Podcast, in case you're wondering. And we are joined by special guest today, Bob LaRue from podcast From Justin To Kane. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Hi, Bob.
This is going to be exciting today because we watched Ratatouille. Yep, that's a fun Pixar film. But before we get started, does anyone have anything interesting in their glass?
I have something super interesting in my glass that I didn't make because, again, my husband Corbin made it. But themed with Ratatouille's French Paris atmosphere, I have a Boulevardier, which Corbin says is a hotter and sexier, sweeter Negroni. But it basically has some rye whiskey, sweet vermouth, and Campari. So it is very nice. And I have a spherical ice cube inside. So I'm super fancy today. So French.
Yeah, I'm being classy as fuck too because I'm drinking wine.
French wine?
It's not from a box. No, it's not French. I'm not that fancy. But it's got like lush flavors of cherry and strawberry and a hinty scent of oak.
Oh my God.
That's what the bottle says.
What was the price point on the line?
Good question.
My price point is always $7 to $10.
Exactly. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Okay, good.
Emily with the Negroni, Ben with the fine wine.
And I found a cocktail called Matt the Rat.
Oh God.
Yeah,
Whoa.
so it's actually pretty tasty. It's just some
First of
light
all, how dare
Bacardi.
you?
It's actually one tea, so I don't know. I think we're all good.
Okay.
It's light Bacardi rum, triple sec, orange juice, lime juice, and some like lemon lime soda, so like Sprite or something over top of it, and it's actually really really tasty.
Matt the Rat.
And Matt, I'm sure there's an actual rat named Matt in Ratatouille, so Wesley's definitely not referencing you.
Right.
There are hundreds of rats in this movie.
Get over yourself, Dick.
Okay. First, wow. Bob, what's in your glass?
I also have a mug of black coffee, but I've added Suntory whiskey to it for two reasons. I would imagine a line cook would be drinking while working. And to stay up late, you got to have coffee and also have whiskey in it. And the other thing was there are a lot of scenes with Remy. And he's having like cheese and an olive or like cheese and a grape. And he eats them individually and then he eats them together. And that's what I did with my caffeine and my alcohol.
Ooh.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's efficient.
It tastes pretty bad.
Yeah, so your background is just like mushy garbage.
Exactly. Yeah.
The premise of the show, right, is that all of our movies are from 2007. So our first question for you is, what were you up to in 2007?
Well, I was 10 years old, and the most noteworthy thing of that year was I ran into a brick wall and knocked out my front tooth. So I was missing a tooth for almost the whole year.
Oh
So
my
my 10-year-old sex appeal really plummeted. You know, it was really hard to date as a 10-year-old at that time.
See, I figured in Canada, missing front teeth is like a hockey thing. So I figured that would up your sexy quotient as a 10-year-old.
Well,
First
I
of
didn't
all,
play
nobody
hockey.
should be saying sexy 10-year-old. Okay. Please, let's keep it.
No, it didn't help because I like can barely skate. I don't play hockey. I'm a bad Canadian, I guess. And so I knocked it out doing something not cool, which was running into a brick wall. So, you know, it was tough. It was a tough year.
Was it an accident or did the wall call you a name?
Were you trying to get to Hogwarts?
No, it was an accident. It was a big accident. We were playing a game called Wall Ball, and it involves running straight at the wall, but you're supposed to stop before hitting the wall, and I didn't. And I had really crooked teeth as a kid, so the one tooth was sticking out anyways, and I just knocked the whole thing out. So,
Jeez,
yeah,
Louise.
yeah.
Did you do any like cool shit with like straws through the hole?
Oh, big
And
time,
just, like,
big time.
Like do different kinds of ridiculous party gags and freak people
All
out.
those 10-year-old parties I was going to. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there were a lot of tricks I could do, but I remember like the tooth came out. And then I had to put it in my mouth for several hours because they were like, it'll still stay alive if it's in your mouth. And then they tried to glue it in. My principal. It didn't work. They glued it in. It fell out an hour later. And then I was just toothless for a year. So I thought it got fixed. And then I was like, oh, thank God that was over.
What are some of your favorite movies from either this year or, in general?
In general, actually lately, basically since the pandemic started, I've tried to watch every single rom-com I can get my hands on.
Oh, gross.
So
Sorry,
I've
no
seen
judgment,
like
no
45
judgment.
romantic comedies.
Nice.
But normally I love The Wizard of Oz is like top 5 for me for movies. And I love all of Paul Thomas Anderson's work, which is, good because this show was inspired by one of his movies.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think like Paul Thomas Anderson's a big one, and then I love rom-coms. I'm not gonna lie, I have no shame. I love romantic comedies.
Did you like rom-coms beforehand, or did you decide once this pandemic happened that you were like, I'm gonna buckle down and get into something new?
Basically, I decided when the pandemic started, I was like, I need to turn a new leaf and start watching terrible movies. So
Oh my God.
that's what I've done.
Is there one that jumps out at you as being like heads and shoulder above the rest of the rom-coms you've watched?
I think Pretty Woman is really, really top notch because it tackles like class and societal roles. It's very interesting. It's cool. And I just watched, I don't know if Made in Manhattan is a rom-com or just a straight romantic film. I don't know. But that one was great too.
I mean, did you laugh?
I couldn't handle crying
No.
that much.
I think that's our answer.
Okay, it's a romance film. I guess I like rom-coms and just straight romance films. Dang. Okay. This is good. I'm learning about myself.
What about this movie made you be excited to be on the podcast?
Well, I was like, what has been made in 2007 and what haven't I seen in a while? And I haven't seen Ratatouille since it came out. And I just had like very vague memories. So it was awesome to like rewatch it. And it was as good as I remember it to be. So,
Nice.
Well, it's good. It's a weird movie. Conceptually, It's a very weird movie. But I don't know. It was really fun to revisit it because I haven't seen it in like over 10 years. So yeah, that was great. And 2007 is hard to pick a film. There are a lot of great movies and a lot of bad movies.
Right.
Yeah.
But it feels dense as a year. There's so
Right.
many movies.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Just movies that just jump out at you for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to get into this movie with you and with the listening audience. So if you haven't listened to the show before, the first half of the show will be discussing and reviewing Ratatouille. And the second half will feature the Battle of Twits, a creative competition between myself and Wesley.
Yeah, Wesley's stepping in
All right.
so that Bob and Ben and I can moderate this bitch.
Yeah.
Sounded so natural.
I
Woo, a lot of hype.
know.
Okay, so we watched Ratatouille, which was directed by Brad Bird, featuring Patton Oswalt, Lou Romano, Ian Helm, Peter O'Toole, and others.
Oh, Cousteau was right. Oh, yeah. Oh, amazing. Each flavor was totally unique. But combine one flavor with another, and something new was created.
Act 1. Remy, played by Patton Oswalt, has a spectacular sense of smell for a rat, which forces him to be the poison checker for the colony, although he wishes he could be a chef. After a mishap in the countryside, Remy is separated from his family and along with an imaginary chef Gustave, played by Brad Garrett. He discovers the world of gourmet food firsthand in the kitchens of Paris. While Remy is observing Gusteau's restaurant, he falls into the kitchen, decides to fix a soup ruined by the garbage boy, but then said garbage boy captures him. Linguini, played by Lou Romano. The garbage boy takes Remy away to kill him, but strikes a deal with him to work together in the restaurant.
I love this premise. I love it. This rat wants to cook, and rats are, filthy according to society. I love this premise so much. They made the rats look really cute.
According to the society, I mean, they are dirty. Like, okay, like that grandma's attic filled with that many rats. She's gonna die of disease and like rat poop and feces.
She's gonna die by a death by her own hands because she saw a rat and took a shotgun to the rest of her house.
Right.
That woman is unstable.
Chase them in the rain. Did you guys get the sense that grandma was a former Nazi?
Definitely.
I mean, with
That's
the
where my
gas
head went.
mask?
Yeah.
The gas mask. And every time she's like, oh, she didn't say a word. She only groaned.
As Nazis do.
That thought did not cross my mind.
Anyway, yeah, that was what was on my mind.
This is one of those movie premises that really could only work by Pixar.
Yeah,
like it's a Pixar movie through and through. And Emily, you've got a little background on Pixar, right?
Yeah, so Pixar always has kind of some just different and weird ideas that really, I think, connect the kid world with the adult world with some really complex themes. And I just did some digging about Pixar and how they started up. I didn't realize that they were just a computer division that was owned by George Lucas for a long time before they were sold to Steve Jobs and then sold to Disney. I didn't realize this, but basically, I didn't know this. They actually did some work for Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan, and that was the first sequence computer animated scene in film, which was really cool. And then from then, they started putting together these really cool shorts in the 80s. They had The Adventures of Andre and Wally B, and they had these little flexible characters and like a bee. Why do we keep having bees in animated movies? They just need to go away. And then the little lamp, Luxo Jr., they came up with that idea. And then there's this tin toy with this really creepy baby. They didn't know how to make humans quite yet look good in the animated world. But from then, they did a lot of commercials before they started to partner with Disney. This is before they even actually were owned by Disney. They came up with this idea of coming up with so many movies with Disney and partnershiping with them for so many years. And that's why Toy Story started, which was really cool. So when I was looking through this, I was reading about how Pixar really made huge strides in animation because prior to this, everything was hand drawn, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like all the movies that we saw, Disney and I guess DreamWorks, they were all animated by hand. And so with this, they kept making big strides. In Monsters, Inc., Sully's Fur, they had to come up with a process that took 3 years to generate that fur. They were like millions and millions of pieces of fur, and they played with a lot of light. With The Incredibles, that was the first time they really did humans. And so they had to figure out how Mr. Incredible's muscles worked, which is really cool. And looking through and seeing all of the stuff that they did a a lot of like real research, like weird research, where they would actually go and try things out and film it and play around with stuff, which I find to be kind of fun. Like with this movie, they made a lot of food. So I have more, but I'll stop if someone wants to say something.
If you haven't seen the Pixar story, it's a documentary that's on Disney Plus now. It does a phenomenal retelling of the early years of Pixar and all the animators that kind of went through their headquarters. A lot of famous people that you would recognize. It's very interesting, and it talks about those leaps that they would take in animation with every movie, and they'd constantly be pushing themselves to make stuff that we haven't seen before. And in that way, I feel that Pixar doesn't make movies, they make films, whereas the rest of animation is making movies. What do you guys think of that?
It's a big question.
Aren't there examples of like great animated films that weren't made by Pixar? I literally can't think of any right now.
Well,
what
like,
about stop motion?
Snow White.
Oh yeah,
Sleeping
Snow White.
Beauty.
Yeah, if you think about the Disney classics, you got those. In modern times, you got to think like I love Shrek 2. I think that's a great movie. The How to Train Your Dragon series is not Pixar. That's another great one.
Yeah, I guess DreamWorks
they are out there. Yeah, DreamWorks.
Yeah, but there are a lot of animated films that aren't. They're just money caches, basically, right?
Correct.
What about Miyazaki films?
Oh,
a lot of hand-drawn animated anime
Right.
I would say are definitely films, because I'm not even talking just like Miyazaki films. I'm talking about like Your Voice. There are a lot of really cool anime movies out there that are just gorgeous and really great dialogue and stories too.
And I don't consider anime to be animated. Like, I know it's still that's type of medium, but I would never call a Miyazaki film an animated movie. I think that short sells it greatly.
Yeah, but isn't that kind of the point you're making, though? Is that like an animated movie, you're kind of categorizing it as less than, and you're just saying that Miyazaki films are more than. So taking the animation description out of it to kind of make the point. Like I would also agree that like modern movies, like where we're at now, like most animated digital or whatever is like Pixar just is, you know, heads and tails above the rest.
Yeah, there's definitely two categories right now in modern animation, where there's the Pixar, where it has all of these really great themes and storytelling devices and animation. And then we have the emoji movies.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that one's
Right.
computer animated too, right? On the opposite scale.
But this movie, it's just so much better than any of those
Right.
animated movies that are more modern, which should have, you know, better things about them. But, you know, this movie, Ratatouille, not only did they come up with a lot more when it came to animation of water and liquids and fluids, because there's all the different sauces and there's the soups and everything, but even Gusteau's fat, which I thought was really funny to research. Like, they had the jiggle. They had to get that right for human animation with computers. I was like,
Cutting edge fat
so
jiggle animation.
Cool.
Love it.
Yeah.
It feels like they made the movie. They were like, what are the hardest things to animate? You have hair. You have like various liquids of different like viscosities. There are things that are shiny and things that aren't.
Mm-hmm.
You have people who are getting wet, and then people all in the same shot. Like, I feel like they were like, let's make the hardest movie possible.
Yeah, and then they build the gourmet chef narrative around that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the narrative that they build around it is really just about a person who considers themselves to be an artist and the rest of the world critiquing their art. Like, this movie is just all about art criticism.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
With Anton Ego, right?
Correct. And it's really about like who is capable of producing art and who gets to decide whether art is good. And I know Wesley and I always have this conversation every time we go to an art museum, because he'll take me to the modern art section and I don't get it. And I look at things and I'm like, that's not fucking art. That's a line on a piece of canvas.
Yeah, when we went to a trip to New York actually to visit Matt, and we went to a couple of museums, and was it the Guggenheim?
Yeah.
I can't explain that one. Like, we were walking through there, and there was some wild art, but it's really fun to go with Ben, who has this critical eye and wants to know the answer, and me, who doesn't have the answer, just pull some shit out of my butt to be like, it's art because of this. And I think that happened like 2 or 3 times in that museum, where you're like, why is this? And I like try to justify and explain it, and you were like, really? And I'm like, I don't know, man.
Yeah. The exhibit we saw was all like found garbage that was turned into sculptures. And
loosely turned into sculptures. Like, some of it was just piles of stuff.
Well, I'm sure that garbage looked great for Emil and all of the other rat friends. This is my attempt at a segue.
That was a great job.
Art
That was really good.
A lot of
Smooth.
characters in this movie.
There are, but honestly, I think Remy is just so endearing throughout all of this. I know I was reading something about how Patton Oswalt was found by Brad Bird, who also did The Incredibles, and he's just fun. He's Edna Mode, right? So he found Patton Oswalt because he had a little stand-up piece about food, and he was so passionate and excited, and he was just like this small little guy, and he was like, oh my God, this is Remy. This is just this excitable, passionate person that's talking about food.
Yeah, and the casting in this movie makes a lot of really smart choices, but then I feel a lot of really dumb choices. Like, you've got Peter O'Toole as Anton Ego, who's just, even in the minimal time he has on screen, he's just someone who steals the entire movie just with the way
so good.
he talks.
Big time.
And then you have the opposite end of that spectrum, which is Janine Garofalo as Colette, which I feel nearly ruins the movie because of how bad her accent is.
So, funny story. until this watch, which I have seen this movie many times, I had zero idea who any of the voice actors were other than Patton Oswalt. And I'm normally pretty good at picking up voices, but I think because they were all doing French accents, I literally had no idea that it was a Janine Garofalo until I looked at it. But that also took me down a really happy path of Will Arnett being the voice of Horst, who has super, super minimal amount of lines.
I killed a man with this thumb.
But after knowing it was Will Arnett, I was like, this is so much funnier now to me. Mm-hmm. Do you think it would have been better to have a French actress play this, or to have the entire cast have English accents, even though they're in France, while Remy has an English accent, as most of the rats do? I don't know if any of them don't, but like, I was very confused about that. Like, why you kind of set it up with English accents because they don't know they're in Paris. And then once we discover they're in Paris, everybody else has a French accent. So why not do one or the other? Why do both?
Well, I was confused by like the rats didn't know they were in France. And then they went down a sewer and they were in Paris. But I'd imagine where that French old lady / Nazi was living, I would think you could see like Paris in the distance or something. Like, how far away were they? I thought the geography was funky of the whole movie, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It felt very strange. And then what are the odds that Remy would find the rats again? Paris is huge. Weird.
It's very low odds.
I'm not going to nitpick that. I loved everything about this movie, and I can suspend my disbelief for that.
What about Emily? What about a floating cookbook? The cookbook is a raft down the river. And I was like, that book would not be floating right
Okay. I'm glad you brought that up, because as we were talking about this week, this podcast has ruined my Google search history. If anybody took a look at it, they would think I'm just a complete moron. Like, last week I researched heroin so much that it started giving me like helplines, and I would search like heroin names, and it's like, do you need help? And this week I searched, do books float? Why does wood float?
Honestly, though, I thought this movie was so endearing that a lot of those things, again, it is a kid's movie. Those things could be kind of hand waved to allow, I saw you, Ben, to allow for some of those things to just move on. And Ben's going to counter this by saying it's not a kid's movie. Go for it, Ben.
I absolutely am going to counter it as it's not a kid's movie. What about this movie would a kid latch onto? Like, the themes are very adult about art and finding yourself and going down a path that ends up leading you to become so jaded in the character of Anton Ego that like you've lost your passion for things. Like, I tried to watch this movie with my daughter, and she could not make it more than 20 minutes.
That's really interesting.
I'll tell you real quick why this is a kid's movie. It's got John Ratzenberger, every child's favorite actor from Cheers.
Oh my god! How many times does Remy almost die the most horrific death in this movie too? That's why it's not a kid's movie.
No. So let me edit what I meant by kids movie. This is not like for the 5 to 9-year-olds. This movie is more for the preteens to teenagers when I'm talking about kids. I'm talking about my middle school and high schoolers because, you know, they have this dream. They feel like an outcast. They're not able to get there. And like, this is exactly where I was in 2007. I was, 13, 14 years old. And this movie, I'm like, oh my God, I love animated movies, but it transitioned me into more adult themes. And so when I say it's a kid's movie, I mean that.
Tweens and teens.
It's a teens movie.
Sure.
It's not like other Pixar movies that kind of manage to walk that line between kids movie and adult movie, like Up, where there are elements in Up that are for adults clearly, like the entire montage of Carl and Ellie and their life together before she dies. But then you also have Doug and Kevin and the more kiddie elements of it. This movie really lacks kiddie elements.
But it's animated.
And it has a talking rat, multiple talking rats. I mean, I think aesthetically it's a kid's movie, but underneath the surface, it's like just riddled with themes and concepts that are quite complicated to tackle, like identity and family, reputation, your dreams, your aspirations. Yeah, it's complicated.
One thing before we move on, I wanted to talk about the music in this movie because it was the first thing that really resonated with me. It started off with just like this kind of eerie rat kind of sounds, a little bit of this music. And then it brings in a lot of these French nuances in it. But I loved this score and how I was completely taken with it right away, where they had all these winds and clarinets that were mimicking the feet of the rats. But then they had this really nice accordion and French singing to fill the world building.
The part where I remember noticing the score first was the part where they're showing Remy's bout of synesthesia, which is like where you start tasting something and then you hear music and see colors and it's your senses getting all confused. And I thought that was a really powerful moment and a powerful representation of that, what's normally a disorder where people have trouble where they can hear colors or see noises.
So I've noticed a theme that when I watch a movie, I almost don't hear any music. And this podcast has made me very aware of that. I couldn't tell you a single song, note, music from this movie. And I don't know if that is a good or bad thing for the movie. Whatever that means about me, you can decide on your own. I don't really care.
You can't even hear the theme of I hear that all the time in my head.
Oh,
or its use of the song Boom Bitch Get Out the Way.
You don't remember that part, Wes?
No, I was blacked out. But I don't know. What do you guys, aside from my own downfalls, is that better or worse if you don't notice a score?
Well, do you feel the music? Because I feel like they want it to be invisible in a way. It's supposed to amplify what's happening and what the characters are feeling and doing. And I feel like maybe you're watching it in the purest way possible.
Thank you.
You're not distracted by like, oh wow, what a beautiful melody. You're in the film watching
That
it.
was so heartwarming.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's have Bob back next week.
What is this? Keep your station clear. When the rush comes, what will happen? Messy station slow things down. Food doesn't go, others pile up. Disaster. I'll make this easy to remember. Keep your station clear, or I will kill you.
With guidance from Colette, played by Janine Garofalo, Remy and Linguini learn how to become a fearsome chef duo, with Remy controlling the reins. They successfully recreate the soup, although Chef Skinner, played by Ian Holm, is highly suspicious of Linguini, as Skinner knows that Linguini is Gusteau's son. Colette and Linguini fall in love. Remy finds his brother Emile, and coincidentally, Remy discovers Gusteau's will and DNA test to prove that Linguini is the rightful heir of the restaurant.
We didn't even talk about how Gusteau's dead in this whole movie.
Yeah. How did he die? I don't recall.
He died out of sadness.
Yeah, Padme is the Padme effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, his restaurant lost the star, so he just decided to not live anymore.
Honestly,
and then he lost another star because that's the tradition, is that when a chef dies, you automatically lose a star, as the movie told us.
It's kind of like Mr. Magoo, where once he runs out of 5 stars, he has to leave.
Stop mean Mr. Megorium?
That's what
I'm
I said.
feeling
Mr.
really
Magoo.
gullible right now, guys. What's the truth?
He died because his restaurant lost a star. That's the truth.
But honestly, he probably died of a heart attack. He was really, really not healthy.
But happy.
Was it his
Very
plan to sell
happy.
frozen burritos and totally sell out? Or was it the chef after him?
No, that was Skinner.
It was Skinner that dressed him up as Guy Fieri to sell frozen dinners.
Yeah.
It is interesting that Anton Ego sort of committed murder, you know? Because there's a definite correlation between the negative review and Gusteau dying moments later. That's suspicious for sure.
Well, and if you see the imagery that they present Anton Ego with, it's a lot of coffin imagery. Like his office
yes.
is coffin shaped.
Yeah.
Well, his typewriter was a skull.
Well, he's the death of creativity, you know?
Yes.
In a way.
Just like this podcast, like we kill creativity because all we do is criticize movies. We don't fall in love with movies.
Okay, whatever. I love this movie even through critiquing it. Actually, one of the things that I love the most about it is this whole creative element of Remy controlling Linguini by his hair. Like that moment where he grabs his hair and he like suddenly avoids all the dishes and causing an accident. You know, he's a garbage boy. They expect him to run into everyone and be a big mess. But when that happened, I'm like, holy shit, this just escalated this movie to a whole new level for me.
Is that the standard you hold garbage boys to, just not running into people?
I mean, they probably do. But here as an adult now, though, I was thinking about, wait, so in this universe of Remy, you know, this is probably Earth, right? But it could be a different Earth. So
A different Paris.
Sure, a
Animated
different
Earth.
Paris. This is animated Paris. So then my thought was, wait, what if all the rats could control all the humans?
OMG.
Like,
Whoa.
what
Or
happens
what if Linguini's
next?
like, I'm a virgin, I don't know how to have sex, and Remy's like, give me your hair, buddy, I'm gonna guide you towards
Well, I
freedom.
mean, that's how he first gets with Colette, was Remy forcing
Oh,
the
that's
issue.
true.
So
Yeah.
not a far leap, Ben. I couldn't handle him controlling his hair because he's like making him chop, and it's like, you know, he's gonna lop off a finger, especially when they had that montage scene where he was trying to put the pasta in and it just flew, like he's doing it with a knife, and then like he's chopping fine. Yeah, right.
Have you guys seen like really intricate marionette puppets?
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
There's like 80 points of control. And in this movie, Remy has 2. And they are structured by the tension of the hair follicle and the skin. There is no down. There is no up more. There is only your hair is at its max. And there's only 2 points of it. So how does he control his legs?
Yeah, but there's
how does he control
thousands
his
of
fingers?
hairs.
You think he's controlling a grip?
Well, don't forget, there's
Excellent
a
point, Ben.
human mind as well between Remy and the human body. You know, that
Ooh,
brain's
so he's
doing
just
a lot of work.
controlling his brain. That's all that's happening is the hair is pulling on the brain, and so
Mhm.
that's why it's working.
Mhm.
So then, to Emily's point, who's special in this relationship? Is it Remy, who has the ability to control a human? Or is it Linguini, who has hairs that connect to receptors in his brain,
Oh.
where 1,000 different receptors bleed into his brain and therefore can control all motion?
Oh my god, you guys. So here's my thought. What if Colette during sex with Linguini pulls his hair? What happens?
Whoa.
Wow.
She can control him.
Oh, I mean, I'd be up for that, but that's
Sequel.
hilarious.
I did
sequel.
more than I'm so embarrassed. I'm blushing over here. Oh my god.
Well, do all humans get controlled this way? Like, or is Linguini the only one who could get controlled, you know? That's the question.
What
Yeah,
answer would you prefer, Bob?
I would like to think that it could be anyone. Like the rats
Yeah.
could take over civilization
Anyone
if they
can cook.
wanted.
Yeah, just
That's-
like
it's in the
anyone
movie.
can cook. Anyone
The
can be
scene is
controlled.
anyone can do anything.
Yeah.
The rats can control everybody.
That's what Gusto meant, because Gusto had this power too. He had a little rat in his head as well.
yeah.
So
That
Gusto
would've
knew
been
that
sick.
anyone can cook.
Wait, so is it
Oh.
only rats that can control humans, or is it the fact that all humans are controllable?
I think
maybe-
small dogs could as well. Yeah.
Little chihuahuas.
Cats.
No. So maybe
Yeah.
this whole thing is genetic, and Gusteau has his own animal that
Oh.
controls him, and so he passes it
Prequel.
down.
Yes. But it's a potbelly pig.
Oh my god!
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, a teacup pig is what I meant. Sorry, the little
Two
one.
hooves, just like
Yeah,
pinching hair.
Yep.
Oh, one leg at a time.
I'm sorry I went down this rabbit hole, but I had
we
to
just went there.
ask.
Yeah, we got off the road.
Yeah, a lot of questions about love and sex.
Well, here's the thing. You know how Pixar works? They do a lot of these just really bizarre ideas. And I'm wondering, like, they probably came up with some of this shit. And then they're like, well, no, haha, this is a kid's movie. But nah, it could be thought of this way.
How dark do you think the Pixar's writer room gets sometimes?
Super
Oh.
dark.
I guarantee there's a 1,000-page manifesto somewhere in the Pixar headquarters that tells us how this all works.
Oh God, I would pay so much money to have Bizarro Pixar, where it's the opposite of child, but it's still like the same media, but it just leans hard into the X-rated.
So just going through the actual movie now, not just like our projected hypotheses of what would happen
Sure.
with different animals controlling different humans. I thought that the idea of Skinner, this chef, Ian Holm did a great job. I thought,
Mhm.
you know, my heart misses him deeply. So he had this whole thing going on where he was trying to find the rat, and he had this whole like paranoia thing going on. And I thought it was just really funny. I would laugh when he would take off Linguini's chef's hat, or he was trying to keep track of him. It's like, oh, I dropped my keys. And it was like, oh, but it was a rat. I don't know. I thought that was really creatively funny.
Yeah. He would crawl in like Gollum and like spy on him from above the restaurant, or he would crawl up like these baking trays to snatch his hat. Like he was like very mobile for a very tiny chef.
Yeah, he was so small. And they said that the animators, they loved all the different expressive, like he was super small, but his face was really big. So they could do a lot with his expressions, which was really fun. Bob, did you have like a favorite part during this whole Remy learning to cook with Linguini or anything about this?
I think my favorite, honestly, was how cute their roommate situation was, because him sleeping on the windowsill looking at the skyline of Paris, I was like, that is so cute. Oh my God. I love it. And then Linguini sleeps on the couch. Like, I just love how tiny their apartment is and they just make it work. I don't know. It's a great friendship. What a beautiful thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So cute.
Yeah, it really is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A great friendship.
Oh, shut up, Wesley.
So I have a question about this movie. Why does this have to be a love story? Wesley, do you have anything to speak to that at all?
I remembered it, but also it caught me off guard rewatching it again because it has been a little while. Like, that aspect of the story does not resonate. I didn't remember, like, I could have not had that and the movie would have been just as good. Like, I just didn't understand why they had to force it in there. Like, there's no reason for there to be any sort of attraction, romance, just because it's a male and a female.
I think it's probably needed from a story standpoint to indicate why Colette comes back at the end, because she's the only restaurant worker that comes back to help him for the finale. So it's probably just creating that connection to get her back in for the ending.
But at the same time, her whole character is built around being a resilient, like, overcoming obstacles and not letting anybody steamroll her. So I think that would have been just as much justification as opposed to a romance.
So I have a couple thoughts on this. One, Colette is the only woman in this industry of men that are cooking. And this is still true today. There are a lot more male chefs in the world than female chefs. And, you know, her having to go from teaching this newcomer and getting sidelined again. So they had a lot of tension there. But then, you know, her being that romantic interest was more a way to add to the story of Remy betraying Linguini as well. You know, like, oh, he's kind of going back and forth between this rat world and this human world, and he doesn't actually belong to either of them. And so Linguini as a person obviously will have feelings about people, and obviously it was pushed by Remy. But Colette's entire premise of this movie was that anyone can cook, and she was really talking about women in her mind, or at least that's how I interpreted it. But then when she leaves out of anger and frustration and betrayal because her lover was being controlled by a rat, she comes back because her fundamental belief is that anyone can cook. She really truly believes that and thinks, you know, okay, well, if he really thinks this, I think it just added to the story in that regard. Although I think you're right, Wesley. It probably didn't need to be a complete love story, and you too, Matt. But because it's so French and so romantic.
The city of love.
Not everyone can become a great artist, but a great artist can come from anywhere. It is difficult to imagine more humble origins than those of the genius now cooking at Gusteau's, who is, in this critic's opinion, nothing less than the finest chef in France.
Act 3. As Gusteau becomes a major success, Anton Ego, played by Peter O'Toole, a famous food critic, returns to threaten his judgment. Remy and Linguini have a falling out when Linguini learns that his little chef is stealing food for his rat horde, so Linguini falls apart when Ego arrives. The crew at Gusteau's leaves when Remy returns, as they are disgusted by the fact a rat can cook. But with the help of Remy's rat family and Colette, they successfully pull off an impressive meal of ratatouille for Ego. Their success is short-lived, though, because Skinner called the health department and Gusteau's is shut down for good.
Did anyone get really hungry during this movie?
Oh, big time, yeah.
I was thinking like how dirty rats are. And I was like, you're just putting them in the dishwasher and then that's it? Come on.
But the food, I'm talking about the food. When you actually saw what they were making, did you...
I don't know. Animated food doesn't really do it for me.
It had me interested to try it for sure. Like, I've never had Ratatouille, and seeing him make that, it looked delicious.
Mm-hmm. I thought they animated the shit out of it. The texture, the color, I was like, yummy, get in my tummy. That looks good, you know?
I want to talk about the actual animation because, Bob, you brought it up, of the food, because I did a little bit of research on that too. So not only do they at Pixar have a lot of consultants that come in, but they also go out and try things. So I'm not kidding you. Part of their jobs were to go out and eat fancy French food. And so they would dine and take pictures and try things and play with textures. They also had a culinary consultant named Michael Warch, and he helped with not only the sets and the layout of the kitchens, but he would actually recreate the meals for them. And then he would come up with like the proper different tools, right? The copper pots, the knives, and so on. He would make sure that they looked right in the animation. So they had to do a lot of changes in animation with the different lighting and how to make these different objects look like they were that object. And so some of the things they had to do with the food was, one, they had to soften the food, like the texture of it, soften it down so it would kind of melt into the plate a bit and melt into each other. Because otherwise it just looked like plastic food. Mm-hmm. They also had to add some translucency to it with the lighting and the shading. So it looked a little bit more realistic. But then even that, they had to add like the steam and the heat coming off of the food, kind of giving that shimmer of the heat of the oven, you know? And then how did it look? You know, they'd have to plate it, present it, and then add the sauce and the details of it. And it just was so impressive how they made it look like, well, now like Instagram, if you go on any food site, you can find anything gorgeous like that.
Yeah, I noticed in the first act, the food looked great, but like it was almost all like it all looked so good that it kind of didn't stand out against anything. So in the first act, I did notice it's in the scene where Linguini is negotiating with Remy, like next to the river, and Linguini is standing underneath a street light, sidewalk light, whatever. But he casts a shadow that comes off at an angle from his head, like if you were in kind of like a foggy, smoky area, like where you see like a darker shadow, like in the air, not necessarily just on the ground. And that like really stood out to me, just how much attention to detail was paid to like atmospheric representation in this animated movie instead of it being, you know, just simple. Like that part really stood out to me.
Yeah, I can't imagine the workload of the army of animators required to make this look the way it looks, because it's logistically a nightmare.
Right.
Like there must have been 100 departments, each dealing with different things. Like lighting direction would just be one job in and of itself, let alone texture, color, time of day. Like density, like if there's atmosphere or fog, it's crazy, let alone like human hair, skin, eyes. What an undertaking. I mean, they must have spent so much money and time.
Yeah, and it's that attention to detail too that kind of gets lost when you watch these movies, because you get so into the story and what's going on that you kind of don't focus on how good the food looks unless you're looking at it with a critical eye, trying to say, you know, does that look real or does that not? Because what I was focused on in this third act was the way that food made people feel, especially with the Anton Ego scene, which is one of my favorite scenes in any Pixar movie, just because of the way it conveys this feeling of nostalgia that I think we can all remember dishes in our past that when you eat it, you're like, oh, that takes me back to this time or this place. And it was a really cool way of representing that in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think that's partially why I talked about the preteens, teenager audience really latching on to this concept in this movie, because that's kind of the time when they start shifting away from their families and away from their parents, but they still have this fond memory. And even though they're not like Anton Ego as like an old critic, they still have those memories. Like I still have memories of my dad making stuffed cabbage and, you know, us having chicken paprikash, and it just warming my soul. And I felt that with how they portrayed that in this movie.
Yeah, food's pretty good.
Sure, Wesley. You don't have any memories like that?
My parents were not great cooks, so the memory I have is telling my mom I wanted mac and cheese and tuna fish, and her putting the tuna into the mac and cheese, and me being like, no, I don't want any part of that.
I'm so sorry.
I'll go ahead and just segue and say, yeah, I remember some Metrodome hot dogs, and those bring back some very good memories. If there's very specific hot dogs that are probably gross now that I'm an adult, but that would transport me back to being like 7, 8 years old and like going to the Metrodome in Minneapolis for sure.
And before we get away from it, because I don't want my parents to listen to this and think I don't have any memories of their cooking, because yes, I do have many fantastic memories. I grew up I was born in Cincinnati and grew up eating Cincinnati chili all my life. So anytime I get to eat Cincinnati chili, like it is transportative. It is that was it.
Transportative. You had it. Yeah.
It is transportative. Edit out all that other shit.
Bob, do you have like fond memories of eating really good food?
Yes. So growing up, I lived with my parents and also my grandma. She lived with us. And so she would cook every meal, and she's old school. So she would just make a chicken pot pie from scratch. Like she would start cooking at noon. Then we'd get home from school and work, and she would just have this meal prepared because she loved cooking. Loved it. So she'd have apple pies, chicken pot pie. She made a couple mean stews. Super like very farmer centric cooking, but it was good, especially during the winter.
Any Canadian classic dishes?
Poutine.
No, Canada. What does Canada have for food that's actually Canadian?
Tim Hortons and poutine.
Yeah,
and syrup covered things.
Oh yeah,
that's true. But like waffles and pancakes are American. We just took it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't think Canada has food.
So real quick, it's hard to talk about Ratatouille without talking about the Pixar catalog as a whole. So what are your favorite Pixar movies? Throw that out to the group.
Ooh.
I'm just going to throw out to start with Coco. I love Coco.
Why?
Start to finish.
What is it about Coco?
So the credits, you get so much exposition jammed in there, and then the music is like amazing, and then you actually learn about some cultural stuff. So like the Ofrenda and like the Day of the Dead, all that stuff. It's like it was just a wonderful story from start to finish. So
I actually have not seen that.
Whoa!
It's so good.
Yeah, it is good.
It's incredible.
Is there a bad Pixar movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
Cars 2 is bad. It's flat out bad.
Yeah.
I haven't seen like the Cars franchise. Sorry.
Was Planes a Pixar movie?
No. Most of the bad Pixar movies are sequels, luckily. Cars 2 is bad. Monsters University is not good.
Oh, I liked it.
Finding Nemo 2 is not good. Finding Dory.
I enjoyed
Cars 3. Isn't there a third Cars?
Cars 3 is not great either, but I mean, Cars in the first place isn't that good of a... It's probably the worst like original movie that they have is Cars.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ka-chow.
I have to say WALL-E is up there for me. Not even because of what it addresses and sort of the social agenda in the film, but how they build the world. Like they keep it's ever expanding throughout the film. Like you're on Earth and it's so small, and then you see the scale of desolation and you're like, wow, that's crazy. And then they go to space. Like they just keep building and building and building. It's amazing.
No, I completely agree. Well, that's one of my favorites because of how they utilize Wall-E and Eve's sound effects. And there's not there isn't even any real human dialogue besides like the recordings that get cast. But you're just, you're thrown into this world, and it perfectly encapsulates the wonder and terror of space for me. And I just loved that.
Yeah, WALL-E's also my favorite. And part of the reason is because just the balls it takes for an animation studio to tell a story like that, where the first 45 minutes is not going to have dialogue, and you're trusting children to be able to keep up and follow along with this. Yeah. Or even having like Hello Dolly, which is an old like 1960s musical,
terrible
be a central
musical
piece to your storytelling. Like it's just It's so innovative and experimental. And I just love that they took risks like that and really tried to recreate a Charlie Chaplin-esque story for modern days.
Yeah, I just saw that movie for the very first time this year. And yeah, it's like you guys are like nailing it. It's so good. I love that movie start to finish. And it's like just the body language. You could follow along. Anybody could follow along. That movie's like perfect.
Also, I'll die on the hill that Toy Story 2 is better than Toy Story 1.
I agree.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Wesley?
Real quick, obviously, I think we're all agreed. WALL-E's great. I think one of my favorite things about WALL-E is what Matt just said, where the personification of a robot, which I think is one of my favorite parts about the new Star Wars with BB-8. I think that kind of links together, but whatever. So picking my favorite Pixar is tough. I think one of my favorites is going to be A Bug's Life, just because it was so early in the franchise and it was so different at the time. I haven't seen it in a long time, so I don't know if it holds up, but I remember just loving it so much at that time. And then I also just got really sad because I pulled up a whole list of Pixar movies and I realized that, I mean, kind of obviously, but this is the only Pixar movie we're going to be able to do on this podcast.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. And I want to say, like, as much as I love WALL-E, Ratatouille probably is my favorite. And so I feel really fortunate and lucky that I got to talk about it, even though there are so many weird things we talked about. It's one of those movies that I put on to make myself feel comforted. And even though, I don't know, food in my life is comforting. And so this movie in general, just it brings me comfort.
One of the things I really loved about Ratatouille, and I also just am realizing about A Bug's Life, is it doesn't have that Pixar knife in the heart twist that so many of their movies like Up have.
LA Dying.
Oh, I love Up, but I can't watch it because you're setting yourself up to cry. And one of my more favorite recent ones is also Inside Out. And I remember watching that like as a 27-year-old for the first time or something like that, and just bawling about Bing Bong.
Same.
Yeah.
It's okay. I cried the whole movie because of my mental health, and I'm like, this is so spot on the nose.
Yeah, at no point during Ratatouille did I start to have questions about my own mortality, which seems to be a case for a lot of Pixar movies. Like you start to just think about death and the death of your childhood and the death of a loved one, and this movie had nothing to do with that, and it was kind of refreshing. Wesley, you got some thoughts?
Hey, let's transition into this funny stuff real quick.
These are just a few of our incredible thoughts.
I'm taking a sidestep from my stupid notes. And this week, as soon as I started the movie, I was immediately disappointed with the fact that they chose to use a rat in the movie Ratatouille. I feel like that's a pretty easy one. So here are some other portmanteau suggestions I came up with. Catatouille. Meow Who's Cooking. Batatouille. Echolocating in a dark dining restaurant. Bratatouille. Like Toy Story, but it's with those brat stalls. Fratatouille. A new pledge is hazed and forced to stick his dick in food.
Oh.
Scatatouille. X-rated.
Yeah.
Gatatouille. A restaurant gets held up by gunpoint only to find out the kitchen staff is also strapped. And finally, Matatouille. Yeah. And this one is just Matt playing Linguini.
Not that much of a reach.
No, as soon as I wrote Matatouille before coming up with why, and I was like, he kind of looks like Linguini.
Klutz, imposter, tall white guy.
Can be controlled by his hair.
Yeah, easily controllable.
Yeah. Okay, I've got a dad joke this week. Dad joke. I can't wait for the sequel Ratatouille.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy
I also had
shit.
another one. I was doing some research and I came across this one. Seems weird that rats have 12 nipples, doesn't it?
Fuck off.
Is it better or worse if we laugh? Because I feel like silence is the correct response.
He could totally just take a laugh from something you genuinely laughed at and just clip it in.
I always take the biggest laugh of you guys during the episode and just plug it in right after my joke.
No, the silence is way better. I'm
Oh
just
my
here
God.
flicking you off.
That's so funny.
I'm going to jump into my ranting today.
I have a microphone and you don't.
So you will listen to every damn word I have
One
to
thing we
say.
talked about a little bit was the awkward romance that kind of seemed to happen between Colette and Linguini. So I want to talk about consent today and how the French in this movie apparently don't think that that's okay in 2007. Sorry for all my French people out there. But generally, across society in film and media, there's this idea that French are really passionate, but not only passionate, they're like weird passionate, where they have this trope of slapping someone across the face really dramatically, or, you know, just a lot of weird violence and threatening that goes on. So right from the beginning of this movie, we see these shadows as Remy is walking through the drain pipe or something to try to get up to the city. And we see these shadows that are fighting, and then a gunshot, and then they're making out. And I'm like, oh, so we're French, are we? Okay, cool. But my big issue is later in the movie, Colette, Linguini, and Remy all have this weird triangle of no consent. And it all starts with Remy's. So their first kiss, I think you all remember this. And when I was a kid, I don't really remember being upset about this, but this time I was woke? Question mark. So Remy forces Linguini with his hair. So we'll just say that, like, Remy can force Linguini to do whatever, and Linguini has a really hard time to resist, as we can see in earlier things when he's accepting help from Colette. And Linguini is forced on Colette. So from Colette's view, she's gonna get kissed by someone she probably doesn't want to get kissed by, as is shown by her with pepper spray. But this is thrown as humor by our director because she gives in and drops the pepper spray. So, Pixar, if you're listening, I know things are changing, but what the fuck? That was a lot.
Felt
The
gross. Yes.
So that goes back to our off tangent. Was Remy controlling his lips?
Okay.
Bob, we're going to move on to you.
Yeah.
We want to hear your
Great.
review of this movie. What did you think of Ratatouille?
All right, Ratatouille. Here's my short review. Ratatouille is a film for the whole family, meaning it's fun to watch at any age and for anyone. It addresses themes of family, ego, identity, career, and that rats have a pretty rough go in life. Overall, I rate this film 5 Ratatouille out of 5.
Ah.
Very nice.
Welcome to the Battle of Twits, our Labor Day weekend cook-off, featuring Bob, Ben, and Emily. I will pose 3 rounds of questions to our less than chef perts, and let them
Nice.
try to convince me who is not a rat in a hat. The winner of each round will get 1 point, and the loser gets 0. I will be more easily persuaded by the more creative and delicious, delectable answers. After our Iron Chef is announced, the loser will have to scurry back to their rat den, having lost a star, while the winner will be given their own line of microwave dinners. Ba, ba, ba. Okay, not actual chefs. Are you ready?
I can cook,
Ready.
but I'm ready.
Okay, so number 1, we're going to have an opponent's choice question, and it's in the spirit of the show Chopped. So what you need to do is make a dish with an opponent's choice of 4 random foods. You must use all 4 ingredients in some way. Also available to you is any other food from our pantry. That's from the show. It's from the show. I love it. If your food is not deemed worthy by our esteemed judges, Ben and Bob and me, you will be chopped from this question. Chefs, meaning Chef Matt, what is in Wesley's mystery basket?
I'm loving it.
Matt, what's in my basket?
Okay. You've got, Wesley, Mountain Dew, hot dogs, peppermint oil, and peanut butter.
Wow. So those are some mystery ingredients there, I guess. So while Wesley has a minute to think, Bob, tell us about something you have watched recently, a TV show or a movie or both.
Something I've been really enjoying lately is on Amazon Prime Video. It's called The Boys.
Fuck, it's so good.
It's so fucking good. And I watched the entire first season in like 2 days. And then I was like, oh man, they probably didn't shoot a second season before the pandemic. Fuck. I want to watch it. And then like a day later, they were like, September 4th, it's going to start coming out again. So I was very happy. Once season 2's over, though, I'm going to be really bummed out again. It's amazing.
Yeah,
it's so funny
really
and so dark.
Carl Urban does a really great job of just playing such a gritty character.
Yeah, but he's so like dark and funny at the same time. Right. And he is gritty. He's just like such a bad person and a good person simultaneously. It's a lot of fun.
Right. Any movies you've watched recently besides Ratatouille?
Ooh, I mean, a lot of romantic comedies still.
Right.
I just watched Always Be My Maybe, which was really good.
On Netflix.
Yeah, that was good.
Awesome. We're going to pass it on to Wesley. Hopefully that was enough time to give us your dish, because this is a timed event. Wesley, What is your dish?
So we're going to start off by slicing the hot dog down the middle, and we're going to smear the peanut butter on both sides to adhere them back together. Then you're going to sear off the Mountain Dew in a pan so it turns into more of a syrup, and then you're going to cover the hot dog in the pan with the Mountain Dew so that it boils the hot dog. Then we're going to add the peppermint oil to some olive oil to toast a French baguette, and then we're going to serve it open-faced on a plate with a sprig of required kale between the two buns, which each have one half of the hot dog each.
Wow. That sounds fucking delicious.
No, it doesn't. That sounds disgusting.
I don't think it sounds delicious, but it sounds edible to me.
And he didn't reduce his Mountain Dew? Come on. You reduce a Mountain Dew to a syrup.
Isn't that what I said?
Wow.
You said sear off.
Well, sear off the hot dog by reducing the Mountain Dew.
So, before we get to some more reactions from our judges, Wesley, what is in Matt's mystery basket?
Yeah, I'll just let you know, Matt, we both had hot dogs on our list, so I had to change mine.
Let's go.
So your ingredients are a hard shell taco shell, a cucumber, a jelly-filled donut, and bananas.
Well, Matt is creatively putting together a dish for us to enjoy. Ben, what have you been watching recently?
I've been pretty depressed recently, so I've been hate watching Glee.
Oh, dear.
That show fucking sucks. And I hate every minute of it, but I cannot stop watching. There is not a single character that I like other than Darren Criss. You come for the Darren Criss, you stay for the Darren Criss. There is nothing else good there. Fuck Gwyneth Paltrow. You have no business being on that show.
Gwyneth Paltrow was in Glee?
Yeah. Matthew Morrison rapping, telling the white kids that they're all minorities. Fuck you, Matthew Morrison. Just fuck this entire show. I can't stand it, but I fucking hate watching it because it makes me so mad and it makes me feel something. And when you're depressed, all you want to do is feel, even if those feelings are negative.
Wow.
We are coming back to Matt, our super famous chef who had a hard taco shell, a cucumber, jelly-filled donut, and a banana to make a meal. What do you got for us?
All right. So we're going to take the cucumber, blend it up, strain it off, add some lemon, and we're going to make a cucumber lemon buttercream that's going to be used to pipe a cake. We're going to steal the jelly from the donut, and that's going to be a thin topping to the cake. And we're going to take the banana, and we're going to make a light and fluffy sponge banana cake. So it's going to be banana cake, jelly top, very thin, with a lemon cucumber piping, and the hard shell taco is going to be ground up and mixed with graham cracker, and that's going to be added on the piping and sides of the cake as a crunchy, and it's going to be a salty sweet texture to add to the cake.
All right, thank you, Matt. From our judges, do we have any questions from our open face hot dog, peanut butter hot dog, and our cucumber lemon buttercream cake, banana cake with hard taco shells sprinkles?
I mean, I have no questions. Can I kind of play a reality show judge, though, and give feedback?
Obviously, yeah.
Matt, I just love the risk you took by choosing to bake something. You really put yourself out there, and I just really appreciate that.
If there had to be a beverage to go alongside each dish, what would it be? What's complementary
Matt?
to these two dishes?
Code Red.
Ooh, Wesley.
Oh.
Full blown gross. Mine's gonna be a nice latte, or just a if you're not feeling like a hot coffee, you could also have a cold brew.
Ooh, okay.
Wow.
Oh, this is so fancy. Fancy.
Oh, wow.
I'm really glad I'm not competing this week, because mine would have been like, put the hot dog in the shell and eat it. And then chase it with your Mountain Dew.
It's just a flight of each item.
Number 2. In Ratatouille, a horde of rats is able to split up into teams in order to run an entire gourmet kitchen. What if we took their work ethic and talent to run another business instead? So your question is to describe how a horde of rats will successfully run a business of your choice. We are starting with Matt on this one.
All right. So I chose a business that has come under fire as of recently. I chose the United States Postal Service Post Office. So rats are obviously very good at handling documents, as demonstrated by Remy when he stole and flew with them. So I would start the first ever rat-only post office, where first, every customer would be seen quicker because we have more customer service reps available for them to process other people's postal requests. So my first group of rats would be customer service. And we would have 1 or 2 people there, real people like Colette and Linguini. They would be there to take the packages and accept post. Otherwise, it'd be run like a call center where little tubes fed the documents up, and then they would come to the rats. And groups 2 through 5 would all be about postal carrier trucks. 5 rats per truck, 2 on the wheel, 1 on the brake, 1 on the shifter, and then 1 on the gas pedal. And then they would stop where they need to stop, glide the mail in, just like Remy did. And, fuck Donald Trump. My pitch. Yeah.
How did you settle on 5 rats per truck?
Oh, I just figured like as many as it takes to drive.
He just did the math.
Yep. Well, the steering wheel 1 couldn't do it. I thought that would be dangerous. So 2 would be there to steer,
Bob, any questions for Matt?
Yes. What is compensation like? And are there benefits,
That's
health
a great
insurance, vacation days?
That's a great question because it costs significantly less to effectively feed rats and to provide them healthcare. They would be given a generous portion of food, fresh food, and they would be given medical attention, as rats die every 2 years.
Right.
Are you at all worried about the quality of work with the constant turnover of every 2 years?
I mean, we would develop training programs, but yeah, I'm just giving you the bare bones of how my post offices would work.
Wesley, what is your business that the horde of rats will successfully run?
So funny you should mention the word horde. My business is going to be centered around unhoarding. Rats have generations of experience and learning around assessing the worth of stuff versus having a livable space for the entire family. Not afraid to get down and dirty, they are able to survey every nook and cranny in your home and to make sure no stone or 4-year-old pizza box is left unturned. With great numbers comes great abilities. Efficient de-assembly lines, patent pending, lines stretching to every corner of your home to relocate and organize your quality assets or redirect them to the trash, which doubles as the rat's salary, which keeps the price of this massive operation irrationally low. Are you in possession of any large objects that you fear a single rat worker cannot move? Have no fear. The Rat King is on our side. Our elite level rat agents lock together their tails and form a megaforce not seen since Megazord. My business? Pack rats. If you're drowning in clutter, let us help you abandon ship and give you a fresh start.
So rats are making the decisions on what to keep and what to throw?
Yeah, they're
That's
professionals.
not how it works on hoarders.
Well, that's why you hire the rats to do the uncluttering for you, because rats have years of experience in knowing what's not worth anything.
That makes a lot of sense. Bob, you got anything for us?
Yeah, let's pretend we're on either Shark Tank or Dragon's Den. What kind of capital are you looking for to get this business started?
$50.
Wow. I'm in. You got it. Holy
You already
shit.
have a horde of rats lined up.
No, but I figured it just takes some time. And, I got nothing but time right now. So
How are you going to advertise
some
job
time.
openings for these rats?
Google, Facebook ads. I'll plaster the community. I've been getting a lot of wonderful Republican posts in the mail. So I've really learned the font type of fear versus strength. So I feel like I know how to hit the target audience.
Yeah.
All right, question number 3. Pixar has had many successes over the years, as we talked about earlier. But what about those ideas that didn't manage to come to fruition? Pitch a Pixar movie idea that was rejected. Wesley, you're first.
All right, this one might get a little long, and I'm going to try to read it a little bit slower so I don't screw it up, because we're going to go on a journey. So my movie is called T-Movie. Just kidding. That was Matt's shitty idea. So my movie is called...
That was a great idea.
Thank you. My movie is called The Family Tree. We start by watching the seed of a maple tree helicopter spin to the ground, and through a time lapse, we see the transition from day to night, night to day, over and over while the seed is stepped on by hoof, paw, and bare human foot. The seed slowly sinks into the mud as rain softens the soil. As the days continue to progress, we see a tiny sprout from the dirt wiggle and dance with joy as it soaks up the sun and drinks up the rain. The very first 2 leaves form side by side, and fall in love and begin to grow a longer stem and eventually produce their very first offshoot. This too eventually sprouts a pair of leaves who fall in love and dance in the sun together. As time passes, the stems turn into strong, thick trunks, and the offshoots turn into stronger and longer branches, all with happily in love leaves, all reaching outward and upward into the sky, with new leaves growing where they can dance in the sun's warming photosynthesis. Nothing says Pixar more than a family, generations, and growth. And then one day, the sun's warmth didn't feel as strong, and the dancing leaves started to get colder and colder, their only movement coming from the chilled breeze and shivering as the sun no longer provided their needs for photosynthesis and their chlorophyll begins to break down. The once emerald ocean begins to turn yellow and orange, and one by one, loved ones begin losing their partners as they fall slowly back to the dirt where their ancestors emerged. Brittle and alone, we see the same hooves, paws, and bare human feet trample and crumple the leaves, spreading them across the ground, only to be joined by their loved ones in broken pieces in the deafening crunch of their sorrows.
Wow.
The production of The Family Tree was brought to a halt after an outrage from the Canadian Film Board from the lack of emphasis on maple syrup.
Wesley, does this movie have any dialogue?
No.
Okay.
Do the characters have names?
Leaf 1, Leaf 2. They don't really know each other by name. They speak through photosynthesis and the sound of rustling.
All right. Well, we are going to pass it along to Matt. Tell us your Pixar movie idea that was rejected.
Okay. Mine is a little bit shorter than that. I have an action spy thriller in the setting of a human and animal style world, much like that of BoJack Horseman. Our protagonist, he's a bandicoot, a British bandicoot. Yes, my movie is James Bondicoot, a bandicoot British spy. But the reason that my movie is rejected is because it is a gritty, violent action thriller. And the style and aesthetic would be that of Pixar, but not the themes. So we're going to have sexy Bond animals, a sexy Bond villain animal. And then like instead of Bond girl, it's going to be a sexy Bond animal. Okay. And then our protagonist who would have sex with both of them. And he also kills so many animals and people in the pursuit of justice from our antagonist that wants to destroy the world because James Bondicoot has a license to kill. And his antagonist is Goldfinger. Every character is a pun. And that's also part of the reason we were rejected.
What are some other animals in this movie besides the bandicoot?
Oh, well, like M is a manatee. And there's a big
M is for manatee.
And she's like, why'd you have to kill him, Bandicoot? Let's see here. Q, the gadget specialist, is a quail. That's my gadget specialist, Q.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate this. And
Sure.
you said it's in the style of BoJack Horseman.
Yeah, in just that, like in the world building, how there are also humans around. So it's like humans and animals, and they just live in a society together.
Are the animals animal-sized or human-sized? Or are the humans animal-sized?
That's a good question. I mean, like the like the animals are like regular size, but except for like a giraffe wouldn't be like giraffe size. It'd just be like twice as big as a human, you know?
Got it. So a bandicoot would be the same size as a traditional bandicoot.
He would be just a little bit shorter than a human adult.
So question 1 was our chopped question. Both of you did a fantastic job of making an edible dish, which was some feat because both Bob and Ben talked about how they would just dip a hot dog in Mountain Dew and call it a day. So, Matt, yours sounded actually really delicious. I think that I would actually eat something like that. And I like that you transformed 2 of your ingredients. Wesley, we loved your plating idea and all your cooking techniques. What came down to this was, Matt, you kind of hid some of the ingredients, like taking the jelly out and not really enhancing it in any way, and then taking the taco shell and grinding it up with graham cracker. That kind of hid the element of what the taco shell was about. Versus Wesley, you added to your plate, you made it really nice and you highlighted each element of it really well. You know, Matt, if you had like a plating of taco shell, you know, in like decorating the cake, I think that would have pushed it over. Question 2, our horde of rats from Ratatouille are now going to go work another business. Wesley had his de-hoarding business where you created your own business, which we were really impressed that you came up with your own business plan and model. And $50 for that. Matt, we loved that you utilized an existing business, and then the idea that there was no direct interaction with the customers. That was something that resonated with all of us because, you know, how is that going to be successful? So we are going to give this one to Matt. You creatively used all the rats for different jobs, and especially the no direct interaction with customers that pushed us over. And number 3, I'm not going to explain by myself because this one was really hard for us because we talked about what about your ideas make them Pixar movies. Matt came up with a movie that was already made. Wesley came up with a Pixar idea that was too short to be a movie. So Ben or Bob, would you like to explain any more about how we made this decision?
Well, we did briefly discuss giving neither of you points. I will say that. Yeah, ultimately, we felt that Wesley's was more in the spirit of the question because it was really more something you would see Pixar make, even if you couldn't stretch it into a full-length movie. Whereas Matt's is just very much almost like a knockoff movie. If you've ever seen the movie Rock Dog, which is just terrible. It's a terrible animated movie, but I got a very Rock Dog feel from your movie where it's just like, this is just pop culture references thrown at the screen in the style of epic movie almost, where there's not really anything to draw in a Pixar audience to this.
That's fair.
So, Wesley, you win 2 points to Matt's 1. We will add your point totals to our scoreboard.
Yes, leaderboard currently sits with all 3 of us having 2 points. Me, Wesley, and Matt.
Wow.
Yeah.
The stakes are so high.
Bob, how was judging with us?
Oh, it was a blast. I mean, the creativity was pretty amazing. The food thing, truly, I would have, for lack of a better phrase, shit the bed super hard on that. So I'm glad I didn't have to do it. And then, the workforce was really fun. Post office, super topical, also essential, great business. And then with the movie pitch, it's also tough it's hard to think of a movie that would be good enough to be thought of by Pixar staff, but not good enough to be made. Like, that's a really fine line you both had to walk, and you both did a great job. That was fun. It was a lot of fun. Also heartbreaking that, you know, some of you got more points than the other. Truly heartbreaking. I'm going to feel that for a while.
It's not easy judging.
Yeah, it's great. No, emotionally, the toil is pretty brutal on this show, but I'll get over it. Yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
Bob, thank you for being on the show. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your podcast, or do you have anything else you'd like to plug?
Sure, I'll plug the podcast. Yeah, so Mike Robertson and I co-host a show called From Justin To Kane. And the basic premise is we take a universally praised and critically acclaimed film, and we take a film that is just awful, just dog shit, and we try to find everything that makes them the same. And it's shocking, you know. It's a fine line between something being awful and something being absolutely astounding. So it's fun to break apart these films, and that's basically what we do.
My only issue is one of you thinks Cats is a good movie, so fuck off.
Well, here's the thing. We wanted to spice it up, and a lot of my friends were like, Cats is so bad. And I was like, it's basically just the stage show, which everyone seems to like. So what the fuck? You got a double standard? Cats is not, like, I had a hard time sitting through it, but I think that was my idea, actually. It was pretty controversial. I'm glad you're upset. People should be. We're trying to, we're trying to piss off people as much as make them listen to it. Yeah, exactly. That's the spice.
Do you have any other examples of episodes where you compared two movies? Like what other movies have you covered?
We've done From Justin To Kelly and Citizen Kane. We just did The Love Guru with The Godfather. It's all over the place.
That's so good.
It's honestly hard. Like, I love watching bad films, but it's tough when you have to watch it like homework, because then a 90-minute film feels like 6 hours and you're taking notes.
Yeah,
it's an awful process.
Yeah, The Godfather was terrible. I loved The Love Guru.
Yeah.
Thank you again for being on, and we can find you on like iTunes and Spotify and all those places, right? Yeah. Everywhere you find podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
So if you guys are still listening, thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and share. And next week, we're going to be watching Good Luck Chuck, and we're going to be having Mike on as a guest. So,
yeah, nice little crossover. Bob got the good movie this week, and Mike gets to watch Good Luck Chuck.
I don't envy him or any of you, to be honest. Although I guess I'll have to watch it if we do a crossover with our podcast too, because then, oh fuck it, I have to watch it anyways. Oh well, we're all in this sinking ship. That's good.
Oh
That's
man,
good.
I'm bringing back the super finger for that one. Yeah. Anyway, thank you again, Bob, for coming on, and
we loved having you. Thanks, man.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks for having me. This was a real blast, and it was nice to virtually meet all of you too.
Yeah,
this is great.
You as well.
You know, through the pandemic, it's nice to see a bunch of friendly faces in another country. This is great.
Oh, that's right. It's always weird. We're like Minnesota. It's the same, right?
It's similar.
We're kindred spirits.
Yeah.
From everybody here, thanks for listening, and goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.